Well everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus and see how this particular phone holds up in 2024. Now it's funny because this particular phone was the successor or the bigger version of the S9 at the time. And it's so funny because during this period of time Samsung was making these phones, they kind of stopped it a little bit with the S10 Plus a little bit, kind of moving on. The S9 Plus was really just a bigger version of the S9, which is so funny because you can't really tell there's like that many differences between these phones. Samsung still kind of does it, but with this one and the S8 Plus, it was just so funny that it really is just like a bigger model. You're getting a couple features here and there that are cooler, but this was a very good phone at the time. I was glad Samsung made a lot of improvements with their S9, with their S Plus lineup in general. And this phone actually kind of started the differences and the major differences between the standard model and the, Plus model at the time. So if you want to pick up some phones, I would recommend buying this though, this year. Links will be down in the description. You can get them from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now starting off with the outside of the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, on the front of this particular phone, you are basically getting that 6.2-inch Super AMOLED display. Now it was a 1440p panel, and it was actually a pretty good display. The thing with this type of panel is that you were actually getting a fairly large panel, which was really nice, but you were also getting a 1440p display, which is also very, very nice. So having that type of capability on this type of phone is really cool, and that's something that's really, really awesome. Now, a few things to keep in mind. You were getting that top bezel and the bottom bezel on this particular phone, so that was something that was kind of a little bit weird probably for some people. If you were getting that top bezel and that bottom bezel, that might be kind of annoying for some people now. But at that time, that was actually a very, very nice feature to have because it was basically that, the top bezel and the bottom bezel. It was like almost bezel-less in a way. The glass on the side's a little bit curved too, which is actually genuinely pretty nice. And that was kind of it for the front. Now, this phone came out in, many years ago in 2018. So you were not getting things like the, 120 hertz display at the time or anything like that. But really no phone at the time was giving you that type of capability anyways. So without a doubt, the front of this phone definitely looks good. And I still think it's a really, really good looking display when it comes down to it, without a doubt. So from that perspective right there, that kind of covers it up there. On the bottom, you're getting a USB Type-C port, which is honestly very cool. Having that USB Type-C port is very, very awesome. And that in and of itself is another really cool thing. We aren't going to put a micro USB thing on this thing, but it's still very cool. Samsung DeX was also on this phone. So you were basically getting that Samsung desktop experience kind of in a way, which was another really cool thing going on for this particular device. On top of that, you were getting the headphone jack on this phone, which was really cool. I love having headphone jacks. And you were getting that micro SD card slot. That micro SD card slot by far is one of the most important things you can probably ever have on any phone. I love the micro SD card slots, and I'm always so glad whenever Samsung throws one inside of their phones because it's genuinely a very, very nice feature to have. So this right there is another really cool thing going on for this particular device. On the back side, you're getting a glass back on this phone, which again is very cool to have. I think glass backs are great. You're getting IP certification on this phone, wireless charging on this phone as well, and you were also getting that dual camera setup. So that dual camera setup is great because you can just go ahead and take a photo or two. We'll talk about that in a second, but it was a very nice camera at the time, and it still holds up really, really well for this day and age too. So there's a lot to still kind of like about this phone. It's still a very interesting device. I'm a fan of it on the outside because it still looks and feels very, very good. But there are a few things that are a little bit dated. I think the top and bottom bezel on the front definitely date this phone to lack of a hole punch display. And on top of that, you're not getting really reverse wireless charging. The camera setup's a little bit outdated, but I still think it's a pretty good, decent phone. It's held up decently well for this day and age. So from that perspective, it definitely gets a thumbs up for me. Now, in terms of the camera side of things, this is also another very, very interesting thing going on for this particular phone. So like I mentioned before, you're getting that dual camera setup on the back side. So you're getting that 12 megapixel wide angle lens and then that 12 megapixel telephoto lens. On the front side, you're getting an 8 megapixel wide angle lens and then a 2 megapixel iris scanner, whatever you call it. And I will tell you, in my opinion, this camera setup is actually pretty good. It's a very, very decent camera. It was a great camera at that time. You're getting 4K at 60 on the back and 1440p on the front, which is pretty good at the time actually in 2018. But I will tell you, in this day and age, it is a pretty outdated camera. The problem with this camera, in this day and age, is that you're not getting an ultra-wide camera, which can be kind of a lackluster feature for some people, but you're also not getting things like 4K at 60 on the front. You're not getting 8K capability now that Samsung throws on basically every single phone now. So you are kind of getting some not lackluster features, but you are getting some features that are missing out on this type of device where they were there on other devices. So, every single phone since this phone has came out has had a massive improvements in the camera, and the S9 Plus was kind of the last tier of a Samsung phone that was it was not necessarily giving you a lackluster experience, but it's not giving you as great of an experience as one of the newer phones could actually give you. So just kind of keep that in mind in the back of your head. I like the newer Samsung phones too. And, I like this older phone too, but the newer Samsung phones are giving you way better cameras than this thing, without a doubt. So that right there kind of covers it up there. In terms of software and longevity, this is another really big thing going on for this particular phone too. Personally for me, I think Samsung right now in 2024 is killing it in the software department. They just promised the S24 massive amounts of software updates. With the S9 Plus, on the other hand, this phone is pretty much done getting software support, and it's been done getting software support since like 2020 or something like that. One UI 2.5 was the last version of software this thing got, so you are not getting any more versions of software on this device. So it is kind of sad because this phone is still like a fairly decent phone in a lot of different ways, but Samsung at the time really wasn't servicing their phones for a super long amount of time, and that was kind of the problem here. So you are done getting software support on this phone, and this is probably the one area where I look at this phone as being probably one of the, not the weirdest devices, but it being kind of outdated. The software on this phone is so outdated that it doesn't make any sense to buy this phone anymore when you can buy a phone that's still supported with software and still get a phone that is still supported and still good to go. So keep it as you will, but that's been one thing that kind of throws me off too. Like, I want to recommend a phone to people that people are going to like. And with this type of device, I'm not 100% too sure how people are going to like this phone if they're already buying a phone that's outdated with software. So take it as you will, but that's kind of just one other thing to kind of keep in mind here. Again, it's not the end of the world or anything, but it was one of those things that I kind of noticed at that moment. And that's kind of what's probably going to end up happening as far as I can tell. So that kind of covers it up there. In terms of software, you're getting that Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 chipset inside of this phone with 4 gigs of RAM on the base model, but it does actually go up to 6 gigabytes of RAM. And the crazy thing is with this type of device is that you're actually getting, I wouldn't actually say the performance is bad. This is actually a very decent performing device. And once again, that's actually really cool. When you're getting devices like this, you're actually getting phones that are very, very decent in the performance sector at that time. But nowadays, you can tell that this phone really isn't that great. Whenever I go ahead and compare this phone against the latest and greatest generation, I'm always shocked to see how good of a job these types of older phones have done. And with a phone like this, I'll tell you, although it's not perfect by any means, it's actually a decent performing device whenever I try to mess around with that. I definitely do think the Samsung Galaxy S10 and those types of devices overall did a better job than this one. But I would still tell you that a phone like the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus, it's really not that good of a performing device anymore. And I wouldn't even want to tell people that it's great because it's going to be very lackluster. But for how old this phone is, I think it's kind of impressive if you kind of know what I'm talking about. So to kind of sum it up, what I'll definitely tell you is, I definitely do think a phone like the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus is a very, very interesting phone because it came out, brought that dual camera setup, was a bigger model, but it came out right before the S10 Plus. And because of that, the S10 Plus was such a massive difference in so many different ways. I love the S10 Plus, and the S10s in general are so much better. The S9, on the other hand, it's just it's stuck in this weird place, where I wouldn't really recommend people to buy this type of device from that perspective. So take it as you will, but there's a lot of other used phones you can buy that are much better than this thing. The S21, I think, is a very good phone. Any of the Samsung Galaxy S21s are very good to buy. I think the Google Pixel 7 is a very good phone that's very cheap in the used market. The Pixel 6 is a really good phone too that does not cost as much money. So those types of devices are very, very solid, and I would 1000% recommend buying those ones. But that kind of covers it up here. That kind of covers the choice. Hopefully, you guys enjoyed whatever watching this video. If you have any other thoughts or questions, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.